Welcome to the Buff Dude's Hypertrophy Plan. This is going to be the beginning stage of the program. It's really a stage that is extremely important, not only if you're a beginner, but also if you've been off of a program and want to start something new. It really gets you used to the workouts. This is a stage we feel almost anyone can do. It's 3 days a week, so you have plenty of rest time. It can also fit into a busy schedule, and you're getting a lot of bang for your buck because you're gonna be doing all the major compound exercises. So in this video, not only are we gonna teach you how to perform those exercises, we're also gonna be doing them ourselves. So you can see exactly how we perform the exercises, and along the way, we're gonna have a lot of little tips and tricks to help you make yourself a better buff dude or buff girl. As you can see, we are getting a little bit of warm up. Warm up is instrumental for us in regards to working out. We try to do it for at least 5 to 10 minutes before each and every single workout. Today we're gonna be doing full body, so we're gonna be doing a mix of upper body and lower body mobility. It's really great insurance to help with injury prevention, and it's also a really good way to prepare your body for the bigger lifts that we're gonna be doing today. So 5 to 10 minutes, we highly recommend it. It's really going to help you out in the long run. So the first exercise of the first day is going to be squats. Now this we feel like is one of the most important exercises that you can learn to do. It's one of the bigger ones. It's working many muscles in the body, and it's a multi-joint exercise, so it is considered a compound movement. Now one thing we like to do before getting into our working sets is doing warm-up sets. Now you can do this with a very light weight, or what I'm gonna be doing is just with the bar. Now a couple reasons why you're gonna wanna do this is to really try to feel the exercise out, especially if you're new or if you've taken a break and you're coming back to working out. You wanna kind of get back into some of the most important parts of this exercise. And one is going to be bracing. So once you kind of come down into this position, you don't want your muscles loose. You wanna make sure that core is really tight to support the spine. One of the ways you can think about it is you're standing in water and it's about chest deep there. So before you go into the water, you wanna take a deep breath. Once you go back above the water, you exhale. And as you take that deep breath, you're pushing against a closed airway and your stomach is expanding, and that is going to be bracing your core and stabilizing you through that movement there. So extremely important to brace through that motion there, especially if you're going heavy in weight. Another thing is getting your feet in the proper position. Now this is gonna vary person to person. Go a little bit more narrow, a little bit more wide depending on the length of your femur or how tall you are. But one thing you do wanna do is just bring your toes out to a comfortable position and make sure your knees are following your toes. Now you'll see some people where their knees collapse as they squat up. That's one thing you really want to avoid. So make sure you kind of corkscrew your feet into the floor. And that's like, you're not necessarily moving your feet, but you're rotating, externally rotating, so that way those knees are nice and wide. And that is really gonna engage your glutes. Glutes are a huge muscle, and that's gonna really help stabilize this movement as well. So a few important things to keep in mind when performing the squats. And once we put some weight on, we're really gonna pay attention to all those things, the bracing, you know, getting the tight glutes, corkscrewing the feet in, neutral chin, and that's gonna help you perform this exercise to your best potential. We've got the warm-up set out of the way, which is, again, we feel instrumental in our workouts, because with the warm-up set, you're preparing yourself, you're kind of getting used to the lift. Even if you've done it hundreds of times, every day is a little bit different. So we always advise doing a warm-up set so you can prepare yourself, feel a little bit more comfortable, keep some of those things in mind like Brandon was talking about, and getting ready for your working set. Having said that, we're now moving on to ours. It's gonna be 3 sets of 6 reps, and we're gonna be sticking with the same weight for every single set. And that felt good. And that is another great thing about the warm-up set. You're not gonna be shocked when you go into the working set. So I already kind of prepared myself, moving up in weight. I feel comfortable, and this felt excellent. We mentioned in the beginning that this is great for beginners or people maybe just getting back into it. You may be asking yourself, well, why are you guys doing it? Other than the fact of offering instruction, of course,
me and Brandon really are fans of starting back at the beginning time and time again. This is a great way to kind of ease yourself back into it. Think of this entire stage a little bit like the warm-up before moving on to the working set. That's the way we like to view this, and it's really helpful for us so you can get back into it, feel great, and then move on to the big stuff. We're moving on to the next exercise, and we really like to design a lot of our programs a little bit like a pyramid with a solid foundation, starting with where you're gonna be working most muscle groups with squats. That's exactly what you're gonna be doing. We're moving on to the second largest muscle group now, which is gonna be back with the bent over rows. Another major compound exercise, so you will notice that we are doing a warm up with this as well, which we typically do with all compound exercises.
So with the bent over rows, very much like the squats, you want to practice and get better at bracing, especially in this position. You're in the bent over position. So as you'll notice as you're taking the bar, your spine is gonna be somewhat in a compromised position because it's gonna wanna pull you forward just like that. It's gonna wanna kind of collapse your chest forward. That's why you really gotta exaggerate that lower back and really try to contract those muscles and brace in that position to stabilize yourself for a safer lift that way. Now, the problem is, much like we're saying with the squats, when you're holding your breath and kind of pushing against a closed airway, letting your stomach expand to really tighten all those muscles in here to stabilize the spine. When you're in the bent over rows, you're in that position the whole time. So getting your breath is gonna be a little bit tricky because you're like, you know, when do you breathe out, when do you breathe in? It's not like the squats where it's more straightforward, where you breathe in the top, hold, exhale at the top. With this, you're in that position the whole time, so you're really gonna feel like you're not getting your breath, and when you exhale, you're gonna lose some of that tension. Now, it's gonna take some practice. You're gonna have to take a little bit shallower breaths, which can be a bit difficult because you don't feel like you're getting enough air. Now, one way around this is actually not having a kind of what we're doing, more of just like a constant tension or almost like a hanging bent over row where you're keeping the weight in constant movement and tension. You're actually letting it lie on the floor and starting it out relaxed there. And then you can pull up from there and then let it rest on the floor. So if you're a beginner and you're having trouble with the bracing and holding your breath in what we're doing here with kind of like that hanging bent over row, you can always start from the floor, row it up just like so. So that way you take a deep breath before you row, hold, brace, and exhale, and then you're gonna be able to relax, get your breath, get your oxygen, and you won't have that constant tension on your back the whole time. So there's always ways to adjust depending on your experience level. But for now, we're doing this. And as you can tell, as we do it, taking really shallow breaths, but still getting that oxygen, but also trying to maintain that bracing in this exercise.
Continuing with our theme of the foundation and working yourself up to smaller muscle groups, we hit legs, back, and now we are on to chest, doing probably the most classic chest exercise of all time, which is going to be the bench press. With this exercise, a few of the things you want to keep in mind is, again, it's a compound, so we're going to be starting with the warm-up. Really excellent to see where we're at, how we're feeling. With this one, of course, you'll see a lot of people do it a lot of different ways. One thing you want to get really used to, of course, is just having control of the bar. It is crazy. You'll even see in moderate to experienced lifters, there's not a lot of bar control. Not only is it kind of all over the place, they're not getting that full range of motion, and this is a very important one. You want to get the full range of motion to not only utilize the chest, but some of the secondary muscle groups, like your triceps, like your interior deltoids. So what we're going to be doing is bringing it down to our sternum, bring it back up to the top position. You're going to feel more of an activation in those triceps, and then you're going to bring it back down to the sternum once again. So relatively simple exercise, but it's one that maybe if you're not really thinking about it, there's a few mistakes to be made.
Now, one thing about being a beginner is it can be a bit overwhelming. And one of those overwhelming factors is how many exercises are out there and the differences between them. We're performing an overhead press, but some people might see an exercise called the military press and be like, well, what's the difference? Because they are very similar. Now, one of the key differences between the overhead press and the military press is your stance. With the overhead press, you have a very wide stance. To support yourself, your legs are locked and you're pressing the weight overhead, primarily focusing on your deltoids. Now, with the military press, you are standing at attention. That's an easy way to remember that. So feet together, And you're basically performing that same motion of an overhead press, but it is upping the difficulty slightly because now your base of support is so much smaller, so you're gonna feel quite a bit off balance and unstable there. You're gonna be wanting to move here as you're pressing up, so it's gonna take a lot more stability, core work, which can be a good thing, but it's kind of a progression there. You know, you maybe don't want to start with a military press right away because it can be a little bit more difficult, especially if you're new to an exercise like this. So an overhead press is a great exercise to start with, and that's one of the reasons why we always include it in a beginner phase or stage like this.
Brandon mentioned bobbing your head out of the way when performing the overhead press, and there are two reasons for that. Number one, of course, you don't want to hit your chin, and you may be thinking, okay, well, I'll just kind of lean back during the whole duration of the exercise. You don't want to do that because that's going to create some imbalance, and the last thing you want to do is fall over. So not only are you bobbing your head out of the way to prevent potential injury, you're also doing it because you're wanting to keep the bar as vertical as possible. And that's really something that you're trying to do in all of these big compound exercises using the barbell, such as deadlifts, squats, the bent over rows. You're always wanting to keep the bar in a straight line, not only because it's going to make the exercise easier, but it's also going to be the path of least resistance. So you're not creating any kind of imbalances by shifting the bar as it works its way either up or down. You're just bringing it vertically from the top to the bottom, and that's going to make the lift a hell of a lot easier, safer, and more efficient.
Okay, so we're actually done with the compound movements. Now we're moving on to the isolation movements, and we're gonna be focusing on this first exercise, gonna be triceps, and it's really just working from flexion to extension there in the elbow joint. So it's only a single joint movement, which makes it an isolation movement. And this is called the single arm dumbbell French press, which you're just taking it right above your head, starting in that nice stretch position there, and extending in the elbow, and repeat. Now usually with these isolation movements, we won't do any warm-up sets, we'll just go right into the working sets. And that's mainly because in compound movements, you're going to be usually utilizing some of those smaller muscle groups. Like for the bench press and the overhead press, the triceps are a secondary muscle group in that. So they're already warmed up. So we can go right onto the working sets. And some people might ask, well, what weight should I use then? What's my starting weight? And that is going to be dictated by you making sure you log all your weights, especially in this stage here, in the beginner stage. And this is really going to show where your strength lies. So very important to log all your weights and take notes on how you feel with that weight as well, because you're always going to be able to go back and reference that for later when you want to start an exercise or kind of really know where your strength lies.
We're moving on to the standing calf raises because this is the Buff Dude's full body experience, and you cannot do the full body without some of the smaller muscle groups that are oftentimes neglected, such as the calves. Brandon's gonna be putting down the 45-pound bumper plate here. What this is really useful for is an increased range of motion in order to get the full benefit of this exercise. We're really about that full range of motion, and it is no different for the calves as well. We're on to the final exercise of day one. If you've been following along with us, this is pretty exciting because it always feels good when you're getting close to the end of a workout, especially one that's been very successful, such as this one. We've implemented everything, the entire body. We could not forget the core, which is what the suitcase carries are working on. But it's also more than that. It's grip strength, it's endurance, so you're taking care of quite a few things with this exercise, and that is why we've implemented it. We're beginning day 2 of stage 0, and this is going to continue a theme that began in our prior day, whereas we're going to be focusing on big compound lifts in the beginning to get you acclimated to these. These are some of the most important exercises you can perform, and that is why they are a mainstay in our program. We're gonna be doing deadlifts first, but just like in day 1, we're gonna be doing a lot of mobility 5 to 10 minutes beforehand, and we're also gonna be doing some warm-up sets in order to feel out the exercise, get acquainted with it, make sure the weight is feeling right before moving on to the working sets. We're now moving on to our working sets. We're gonna be doing 315 pounds. You might be looking at this weight and going, that's the working set? For us, yes, it is. But we've been doing this for quite some time, and everyone's experience levels are going to vary. Your working set may be 135 pounds, and that is totally fine because where you are at in your fitness journey is going to dictate how much weight you should be using. So never feel pressured, for instance, if you see us doing 315, don't feel like you should be at 315 because we're all at a different point in our journey. And that is again why logbooks are so important. You want to track where you're at and you want to eventually slowly increase that weight. So over time, your 135 could become a 350. That's recruiting a lot of muscles. You're gonna feel that exercise at work in these working sets, which is what you want to accomplish. So I was just about at failure there, which is perfect. We're moving on to our next exercise, another compound following the same theme. So we started with the largest exercise and we're kind of moving down the line, a little bit smaller each time. This one is going to be focused on back, so still relatively large, but not quite as big as the deadlift. It's going to be pull-ups. Not only pull-ups, weighted pull-ups. And depending on your experience level, you may be going, I can't even perform a pull-up on its own. How the hell am I supposed to do a weighted pull-up? Thankfully, there's a lot of different assists that you can use in helping you to perform the pull-up as you work up to a body weight or even a weighted one. A great one that we really enjoy is using a band such as this. So as you can see, I'm just putting this over my single knee and right away it's gonna help immensely. But the great thing is, it's not taking all of my weight away. So even though it is helping me out, you still gotta do the work in order to accomplish every single repetition. And the better you get, the smaller bands you can use until you're finally able to do it body weight and then one day weighted as well. So there's a lot of great little assistance such as this one in order for you to learn your first proper pull-up.
A few things to keep in mind when performing the pull-up. It is going to be primarily the back, but there are going to be a few other muscles that are helping out. One is going to be your grip, and then the other one is going to be your biceps, posterior delt. So there's a few other muscles that are helping out, but you really want to try to focus on the back doing most of the work. And that is going to be accomplished by really paying attention to what your scapula is doing or your shoulder blades. So when you're in the hanging position, you want to really pull your shoulder blades down as you pull up. That's going to help engage your lats there. An easy way to practice this is just go in a hanging position and pull your scapula down just like that. That's depressing your scapula there. And that's going to help kind of get you used to that motion there so you can get ready to go into the pull-up. So you can even kind of like practice it, do half reps to really feel the activation in your lats. Another thing is some people might have a problem with that hanging position there because it is going to take a lot of grip. So much like Hudson was saying, there's a lot of different exercises, variations of the pull-up to help you out in order to perform the pull-up better. And one simply is just hanging there, getting used to supporting your own body weight. You can time it if you want, or you can just kind of do this to warm up, get you ready, introduce some of those scapular depressions, and then work into that pull-up. And as you pull up, you really want to pull your elbows back, down and back. Almost imagine like you're tucking them in your back pockets there. In doing that, it's gonna kind of squeeze those muscles, activate those muscles in the back, like your trapezius, your lats, to really help get that full range of motion and also the proper activation in the muscles you're really trying to work.
Compound number 3 of the day is going to be the incline bench press, focusing primarily on the chest. And as it's an incline, it's going to be a little bit more focused on the clavicular or upper portion of the chest, which is a smaller portion of the chest. It can be a little neglected, a little harder to develop, and that's why we're doing it. One thing you want to notice with the incline is sometimes you compensate, because doing a flat bench press or doing a decline bench press is going to be much easier than the incline. So as you perform the incline, you may not even realize it, but you may be compensating by really arching that back. And see what I'm doing here? Basically, I have turned this into a flat bench press. So it's going to feel easier, but I'm not going to be getting the benefits of the exercise. So you want to try to remain as flat on the bench as possible. You could even increase the incline of the bench a little bit, but of course you don't want to turn it into a shoulder press where then your deltoids, specifically your anterior deltoids, will be doing most of the work. So you want to find something that's comfortable for you, but at the same time, you want to make sure you're not compensating by having that flat back during the exercise. The fourth compound of the day is going to be the shoulder press. This is going to be similar to the overhead press with one major difference. we're gonna be seated. So your legs are gonna be out of the equation. A lot of the focus of not only is gonna be on the deltoids, but it's also gonna be on the core, because you need that stabilization in order to remain in an upright position. So you want really nice points of contact with your feet on the floor, nice and secure. You want that straight, tight core in order to really keep it engaged through the duration of this exercise. And we are gonna go straight into the working sets. We feel pretty confident with this one. It's gonna be 3 sets, 6 reps. The first isolation exercise, a little bit of a buff dudes pop quiz. What differentiates a compound exercise from an isolation? With the isolations, you're only going to be working a single joint. In this particular scenario, it's gonna be the shoulder, whereas something like the compound, you're gonna be working multiple ones. That would be like the elbow and the shoulder both working together. And on this particular exercise, the lateral raise, it's right in the title. You're gonna be working the lateral head of the deltoid. That's gonna be the middle head. We're gonna be singling that one out for 3 sets of 8 reps. Moving on to a forearm dominant exercise, which is gonna be the finger curls. You can do this with either a barbell or a set of dumbbells. I'm doing it with a barbell. It's a pretty simple exercise. You wanna just go ahead and rest the bottom of your forearms onto a bench. You wanna go ahead and have your wrist just hanging off the edge there. The point here is you're trying to bring the bar to the bottom of your fingertips, rolling it right down there, and then you're rolling it right back up. Really squeezing at the top position, really try to engage those forearms. As you can see, my forearms are already engaged. This is just the first set of 3. We're gonna be doing 8 reps each set. Okay, we hit a smaller muscle group with the forearms, and now we're hitting that neglected muscle group again, which is the calves. We're doing something very cool, which just proves that there's always a way to get an exercise done. We're gonna be doing seated calf raises, but you're gonna notice we're doing this a little bit different because we're gonna be doing it with dumbbells. We're using a 45-pound bumper plate in order to elevate our feet for a farther range of motion, but we're just setting the dumbbells on top of our knees, and we're getting it done that way. You may see it in the gym where you have a machine, but if you don't have a machine, you can always use it the way we're doing it. So many different ways of accomplishing an exercise. This is just one of them.
The last exercise, and we're ending with core, much like the previous day. And this is especially important as a beginner to really focus on core strength, not just your abdominals, not just your 6-pack like we were talking about the day before. In this particular exercise, the Pallof Press is very good in strengthening the core. And you'll notice we have a band. You can also do this with a cable. Sometimes a band is just cheaper, especially if you don't have a whole cable machine. But you're stepping away from the band as it's anchored to something very stable, just about midline to the body there. You're pulling it in position, getting that nice tension on there. You're bringing it to the body, and you're just slowly pushing outward. You don't want to lean into it. You don't want to lean outward. You want to really keep that nice, straight, and rigid torso. Now, one of the things, much like the suitcase carry on the day before, it's all about bracing and holding in position. So there's not only a concentric and eccentric movement in there, pushing out and bringing back in, there also is an isometric or like a hold in there, bracing, where you have to hold that position as you're pushing outward. And as you push out, that's gonna make you more unstable. So you're gonna really have to pay attention to how much you're bracing and how much you're tightening the core. And don't think of it as just your abdominal section being tight. You also really wanna focus on your glutes, keep those glutes really tight, the lats, the shoulders. Really focus on that breathing, holding that position, nice and slow, good tempo. And these work like a charm. We are on to day 3. It's the last day, final day of the beginner stage. And this day is gonna be slightly different than the previous days. It is all or mainly gonna be unilateral work, meaning we're concentrating on one side at a time. So this first exercise is gonna be split squat. So it's really almost like a single leg squat. You're really focusing on the leg that is placed forward. So you're in that lunge position or that split squat position there, and you're really focusing on one leg at a time. So it's an excellent way to really pinpoint each side over the other, and this is a great way to find any deficiencies that you might have. One side maybe being weaker, maybe being a little bit more unstable. So this is, one of the reasons why we'd like to include this specifically in the beginner stage is because this is going to give you a little bit of indication on where you need to go from here. And you can always do some extra reps on your weaker side, or you can implement certain exercises that are gonna help with mobility if one seems a little bit more immobile or off balance. So this is a great way to not only log your weights, but take notes during the stage as well. Be like, wow, my left side was quite a bit weaker, or I felt quite a bit off balance, or maybe I was pretty immobile on my left ankle there. I should probably pay a little bit more attention to that. So that's why this day is very important and one that we highly recommend.
And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty tired, and this is, yes, a beginner stage, but when you're doing a lot of massive compound exercises that we've been doing all week long, your body is still gonna get sore no matter how experienced you are. So again, that's the importance of rest, and take the full extent of those recovery days to really benefit from how much you are beating yourself up in the gym so you can properly rest and recover and build all that sweet new muscle growth, baby. Yeah.
Wrapped up the split squats, now it's time for the single arm dumbbell rows. Again, a unilateral exercise, and as you can see, we're utilizing a bench to support ourselves. You can also just stand in place just like this and support yourself on your own leg that's forward there. So you don't need a bench, but sometimes it's just a little bit more stable. It's a nice big platform for you to kind of lean against. And for me, you'll get some people that kind of kick their leg back here. And when you're rowing some pretty decent heavy poundage, like this is 100 pounds, it's gonna wanna pull you to one side as you lift the weight there. So you're gonna feel very unstable. Now an easy fix is just widening your stance out, just like that. So your base of support now is pretty wide. You're gonna feel very stable because you wanna feel it all in those lats there as you roll that weight up. So that can help out quite a bit.
There's nothing more exciting than getting on a plan, being consistent with a plan, and seeing results from a plan. And depending on who you are, that can take different amounts of time. We like to kind of think about it like this. For the first month, you're just getting used to the plan. You're staying consistent. By the second month, you're usually seeing results within yourself. If you're taking progress pictures in the mirror every morning, which we highly recommend. And by the third month, that's usually when other people start taking notice. They look at you and they go, wow, what have you been doing? And if you've been good with your eating as well as your workouts, you're gonna see some major changes. So much, in fact, some people may even be thinking you're taking certain medical shortcuts in order to look the way you do, but that's the good news. It can be done naturally with consistent working out and an eating plan, which is exactly our goal. Please make it your goal as well, and you can be a version of yourself you've only ever dreamed of.
We are onto the single arm flat bench press with the dumbbell, of course. And this is another one that's gonna make you feel pretty off balance or unstable, because as you pull that weight down, it's gonna wanna tilt you to one side. So you're gonna get a nice wide stance so you can really plant yourself on the floor and on the bench. So that way, because you don't wanna twist with the weight, you wanna try to keep those points of contact on the bench. So that way you're gonna have a more stable and stronger press.
Yes, I am working out in the first stage without a shirt on. I'm taking a big risk here. But it's because I wanted to show you, this is where we're starting out. Obviously, we've been working out a long time, so we're in pretty good shape. We try to stay in the best shape we can throughout the year, but hey, things happen, especially around the holidays. You're eating maybe not the way you normally would, usually a lot more calories. Maybe your workouts have reduced. If you're getting over maybe a cold, a fever, the flu season, you haven't had a chance to go in the gym. So this is where we're beginning. This is our physique, and I only want to get better from here. So this is the stage 0, and I'm very excited to see what it's going to look like in the stage 4.
It is the land of the unilateral movements, because we have another one. It's going to be the single arm dumbbell shoulder press. We're just doing it in the standing position. You can do it seated if you want, as a little alternate version, but really you're gonna try to do it without a backrest, without the stabilization of something to lean back on, because we're really trying to stress the core and also really try to control that movement, because much like many of the unilateral motions we've been doing this whole workout, it's gonna wanna throw you off. So as you can tell, all this weight is placed on one side. If you got a weak core, or if you're just not bracing properly, you're gonna wanna bend to one side. Now, it's gonna make it more difficult if you have a really narrow stance. So just to make sure you're stable enough, You want to get a nice wide stance, but really brace in that core and hold as you press up. So that's it. You really try to not push too much this way or bend that way. Really want to be as stable as possible. Everything's super tight. You're just like a machine, just like a piston going up and down. It's really the goal of this. Everything's nice, strong, tight, and ready to go. Yeah.
Unilateral, single, dumbbell calf raises, standing. We're DIYing this a little bit. We've got the 45-pound bumper plate, so a little additional range of motion there during the repetition. We're supporting ourselves with the bench. Another great opportunity to show you that there are multiple variations for any exercise. So there's, of course, standing calf raise machines in the gym. But if you don't have that available, like us, you can just do this little DIY setup right here. Same range of motion, same effectiveness, just a little bit different setup.
We're finally onto some bilateral movements, and this is going to be the skull crushers. An excellent isolation movement for the tricep. You're going pretty heavy with this one, as you can see. You got some 45-pound plates on each side. This happens to be a pretty, I wouldn't say easy, but an easier exercise for us to perform. Been doing skull crushers for a long time, but it's fairly simple. It's an isolation movement. It's really just working on extension and flexion in the elbow joint. A few things you have to keep in mind in this is some people might feel a little discomfort in their elbows. One of this might be just because of the positioning there. It can kind of like put a little pressure on that elbow joint. So we'll recommend maybe just, instead of having the bar right at your forehead or skull there, bring it a little behind your head. Now this is gonna move your upper arm back and your elbows kind of pointed more behind you there. So when you're in the complete flexed position in your elbow joint, it's not gonna be as extreme as if you were coming down to your forehead. Because all of a sudden now behind you, relieves a little tension in the elbows. You can have a little flare in there too, not too much where it turns into a press, just enough to relieve a little bit of that tension on there, and you might feel that this exercise is a bit more comfortable in that manner, but excellent way to build the bulk in the triceps.
For me, sometimes what really works when performing exercise as well is little cues. And a good cue for me is, as Brandon was saying, you're bringing the bar a little bit back. And my cue is, as soon as I feel my knuckle touch the pad of the bench, it's kind of my cue to bring it back into the top position. Make sure and focus on the lockout to get the full benefit of the tricep. Years ago when I was a beginner, I would have a real problem where I'd kind of just do those half reps. And in the end, that's not really benefiting you. And for the cue, it's really great to bring it past the forehead, because of course you wouldn't want the cue to be knocking your forehead every single time. So for me, that's another small reason why bringing it just a little bit past the forehead works a little bit better for me. We've got another bilateral exercise on the menu. It's going to be hammer curls. So this one is not only engaging your bicep, but also your forearm as well. And you're going to notice when performing this exercise, you're not going to have your grip supinated or pronated. You're going to have a neutral grip. So you're going to take both of them, that neutral grip, you're bringing them up at the same time, squeezing at the top position, and then right back down. Elbow flexion, extension, another isolation exercise, and another damn good one for both the biceps and the forearms. The last exercise, we're back to the unilateral. We're going to be doing side planks. It's going to be 30 seconds every side. So it's more than just getting into position. You really want to lock and engage. So really try to keep that core really tight, flex that core, feel that core, and really engage everything helps. So even flexing the bicep, you're just trying to stay a tight, solid unit through the entire duration of those 30 seconds. I'm finished with the first side, so now I'm going to be moving onto the other. And you're trying to keep everything in line, as you can see. Straight legs with the straight spine. Your head is gonna be no different. We're gonna make it through that entire duration, and then we're done. Yeah. So we're done with the beginner stage. We hope you enjoyed it. Join us for the following stages in the hypertrophy plan. Of course, pick the book up if you get a chance, link in description. We love the support. We hope that this video helped you in some way, and until next time, stay buff.